Okay, so today we are filming my May TBR, and I'm so excited to be doing this with you guys because of so many reasons that I can finally get into. I've been waiting to discuss this with you guys for at least 2 weeks, so let's get right into it. The first thing that I want to say is a massive shout out to my local bookstore who are just incredible. If not for them, I probably wouldn't even have I wouldn't have the TBR that I have, let's put it that way. So they've just been so amazing and so supportive during the lockdown, where we've gotten to a great place in our relationship where I can call them up and on the same day at around somewhere between 5 and 6 p.m. they will deliver the books to me same day that I order it, which is so good. They've been so supportive and I just want to say thank you to them. Okay, the next thing that I want to talk to you guys about is that in April, as you guys know, it was one of my best friend's birthdays, and to celebrate her birthday, I ended up reading the Lord of the Rings quadrilogy. I apologize. I keep getting those words confused. Quadrilogy. Now, if you've seen my video of the Lord of the Rings, you know what I thought about that. I wasn't a fan, but I was happy to read it to celebrate one of my best friend's birthdays. So this month is my birthday. Ding, 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 ding. So May is a very special month to me because it does celebrate my birthday, and I've always just loved this month. So in honor of this month, I wanted to choose books that I knew I was either going to love to read or books that I have been very highly recommended to me, and I'm very satisfied with my list. So once again, I am going to be reading a series. In May, I'm going to cover 4 books in this series. This series does not just have 4 books, it has more than 4, but I will get through the first 4 this month. And with it being May, and with it being my birthday, and the fact that I only just last week finished reading the original Mistborn trilogy, that series does not qualify. So we're going for my second favourite series. I'm going to be rereading the Harry Potter series, and I'm really, really excited about this, you guys. I'm going to be starting with The Philosopher's Stone on the 1st of May, and then every week I will read a new Harry Potter book. So by the time we get to the end of May, I will have read Harry Potter book 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is just going to be so incredibly amazing. Now, for today's TBR, I'm not going to show you all of the Harry Potters at once. I'm going to show you the books in the order that I'm going to read them, although I think 1 or 2 of them is out of order, so I'm going to rearrange the order because I had to do some last minute changes, and there will be a lot of pausing in this video because I just want to be able to fly by through the video. So, first pause coming up, but we'll be right back. Okay, so once again, the first book that I'm going to be reading in the month of May is going to be Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Now, I know that there might be some confusion out there if you're an American and you have read this first book. The American version of this book is called Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, but the English, UK, and the Australian version is called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. There's a lot that we can discuss about that, but we might as well just do it in my review. I am going to be reviewing each of the Harry Potter books that I do. I make that vow. I'm not going to promise to review every single book that I read, but I will certainly review every single Harry Potter that I read. So the very first book in week 1 of May that I'm going to read is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. This is a 223-page book, so it is less than a half tome, but, you know, getting up towards there. But it should be a really fun read and full of a lot of nostalgia, and the genre for this book is fantasy. So yeah, you guys know I love my fantasy, and there is magic in this series. It is a soft magic system, but it is very predominantly displayed throughout the entire series. So, I mean, I love this series, so I know I'm going to love this book. Let's move on to the next one. So as you guys know, I was talking about my bookstore, who have just been so incredible. Thank you again. When they delivered the last lot of books, which includes most of the books you're going to see here for my May TBR, they came with the books in a box, and inside that box they had these little trinkets for me and my niece, because me and my niece both ordered books, and they also added in, I think it was either 3 or 4 books for free. They just complimentarily just added these books in for nothing, which was amazing. So I chose one of them, and I'm going to read it as my second book that I read in week 1 for May, and that book is this one. It is The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin. Now, I've heard of Jemisin before. A lot of people seem to like Jemisin, and a lot of people seem to like this book. I honestly don't know a lot about this book at all. Let's quickly read the blurb. Every great city has a soul. Some are as ancient as myths, and others are as new and destructive as children. New York City, she's got 6. So it comes very highly recommended. There are a ton of, recommendations on the back. From Entertainment Weekly, GQ Magazine, The Guardian. So, yeah, there's a lot of recommendations for this book, and I'm looking forward to it. In fact, the New York Times book review has a quote on the front: the most celebrated science fiction, there we go, now we know the genre, science fiction and fantasy writer of her generation. Jemisin seems to be able to do just about anything. So I know nothing about this book. I'm going in blind, but I'm okay with that. I just can't believe they gave us some complimentary books, and I would not have picked this book up otherwise. So if I end up loving it, then N.K. Jemisin, you owe that to my bookstore for throwing your book in as a complimentary book. So we'll see how we go with this one. I'll let you guys know. The next book that I'm going to be reading, the final book in week 1, is the first book in a series. This series has been out for a while, but I have not. I actually, that's not true. I've read the first chapter many years ago. I think it was been about 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, a long time ago, but I didn't continue on with it. I kind of DNF'd it and just left it. So I do plan if I enjoy the first book in this series, I plan on reading this book in May, the first book in May, second book in June, and third book in July. But I quickly need to wrap this up first. I'm so sorry. This book is 437 pages long, so it's not quite a tome, but it's close. It's within 100 pages of a tome. So there we go. All right. So that book, the book I'm talking about, where if I enjoy the first one, I'll read the first one in May, second one in June, and the third one in July. And that is this book, The Hunger Games by Susan Collins. Now, there are a lot of people who have spoken to me recently about The Hunger Games. My books are falling down. Who have spoken to me about this trilogy, about the books and the films and how wonderful they are. And a lot of people have also said to me with similar things that I like, books that I love to read and films that I like to watch, that if you like these, you're going to love this. So, you know, based off you guys' recommendation, I'm going to give it a go, and I'll certainly let you know what I think. So this book is 454 pages long. It is the longest book I'll read in week 1, and so it's about 56 pages away from being a tome, which makes it a pretty long book, but there you go. I'm looking forward to reading it. We'll see how we go. In total for week 1, I'm going to be reading 1,114 pages. So now we're going to move on to week 2. So for week 2 of May, I'm incredibly excited because I read a book in April, I believe it was the first week of April, that I fell in love with, and I'm going to talk to you guys about it more in my monthly wrap-up that's coming up tomorrow, but it was just so good. So I was discussing with my mum and my sister about what we could do for Easter, and they both offered to buy me a book, and this is going to allow me to continue on with the series. I'm going to be reading my mum's book that she bought me in May and my sister's book that she bought me in June, because the book that my mum bought me is the second book in this series. This series is known as the Selection series, and the second book in that series is this one, The Elite by Kiera Cass. So I will talk about the Selection book tomorrow in my monthly wrap-up. It was amazing. So the basic premise of the first book is that this girl, America Singer, ends up going into a ballot to be a part of, let's say, The Bachelor, but where The Bachelor is actually the prince of that world. And so there are 35 women vying for a spot to be the new princess, but there is so much more to the book. In fact, there is the most number of different classes of a caste system that I've ever read, which complicates the book, but it made it more exciting for me. The protagonist is headstrong and she's just wonderful and just not what I expected. So I can't wait to read this, and I want to give a big thank you to my mum for buying this book for me so that I can read it, and I'll give her another thank you when I do the reading vlog, and if I end up reviewing it, I will thank her there as well. But thanks, Mum, I really appreciate it. So that's The Elite, and I'll be reading that as the first book for week 2 of May, and this book is 336 pages long. So the second book I'm going to be reading in the week 2 of May is going to be the second book in the Harry Potter series, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Now, I've read a few reviews of Harry Potter because I've read this series that many times, although the last time I read it was an incredibly long time ago, probably about 5 years ago. And generally speaking, people tend to say that they find the second book to be their least favourite in the Harry Potter series. Will I agree? Will I disagree? Time will tell. I love all of the books, so I don't even know if I'm going to be comparing and contrasting them, which book is better, which book is not. We'll see. But as a stand-alone and not comparing this book to any of the other Harry Potter books, I do really love this book. I enjoy everything about it. So I won't get into spoilers, but yeah, this is the second book in the Harry Potter series. Obviously, it is a fantasy book. Oh, sorry. The Elite, I spoke about earlier, is a dystopian romance, and I don't know what The Hunger Games is, but I think it is a fantasy. I don't know. But anyway, I'll correct that at some point. But this is a dystopian romance, and the dystopian part is really awesome. This is a fantasy, and Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets is 251 pages long. So that's the second book I'll be reading in week 2 of May. Okay, so I am incredibly excited to show you the third book I'm going to read in week 2 of May, because I've heard about this book for a long time now. I don't know when this book was released, but if I'm to hazard a guess, I would say it was either 2019 or 2020. In fact, it was earlier than that, so I'm going to let that go. But I've heard about this more recently than I have, well, I didn't even know about BookTube prior to this year, but people have been talking about it more and more this year, so I came to know of it this year, and it sounds like it is going to be the perfect book for me, and I'm so happy that I finally have it. I knew I would read it at some stage, and excuse me, with May being my birthday month, it's the perfect time to finally read what sounds like an amazing gem. It is called The Shadow of What Was Lost, and it is written by James Islington. So this is a high fantasy book. There are magic systems in this book. You guys know how much I love that kind of stuff. It is very hefty, fella. So the page count for this one is 602 pages, which takes it 102 pages over being a tome. So it's going to be a very long read, but we will get through it. We will manage. And I'm just incredibly excited to read this. I have not read the blurb because I want to go in blind, but there's a small thing at the back that I'm going to read. It says, with its vibrant setting and grand scope, The Shadow of What Was Lost makes the debut of a major new talent in epic fantasy. So, yay! You guys know how much I love my epic fantasy. I'm so looking forward to jumping into this, and I can't wait to share with you my reading vlogs, how I'm going reading this. We'll see how we go, but incredibly excited about this, and I want to give a big shout out to my favorite booktuber, who I am yet to actually give you her actual name, but I will be doing it very soon. It will be coming up in May, so I will be letting you know. I already have plans for when I'm going to do that, but yeah, thank you very much to my favorite booktuber for recommending this. I'm so excited. I can't wait to get started. So in total for week 2 of May, I'm going to be reading 1,189 pages, so pretty cool. Averages out to about 170 pages a day. So there we go. Let's move on to week 3. And the first book that I'm going to be reading in week 3 is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Yeah. Okay, so I spoke to you guys with book 2 about how people, when they're comparing the series, tend to say that book 2 is their least favorite of the series. Book 3 is one of my absolute favorites. Film 3 is one of my absolute favorites. I love Prisoner of Azkaban so much, and I know that there are people out there who get annoyed by this book because of the whole time turner situation. If you haven't read it, hopefully that doesn't mean anything to you. If you have read it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I just found it to be really awesome. I loved the implementation of the time turner. I love meeting all these new characters such as Sirius Black and learning more about Sirius and so many other things that go on in this book. I love this book. It's, yeah, a lot of fun. So this is the first book I'm going to read in week 3 of May, and it is 317 pages, so not quite a tome, but really looking forward to it for the nostalgia. This is a fantasy book and the third book in the Harry Potter series. The second book that I'm going to read in week 3 of May is this book, My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. Okay, so this is the, I guess, Australian/UK cover, because I do prefer the American cover, I've got to be honest. So visualize a woman's face, black and white cover, and on one side of her face you see her eye closed with eyeshadow, and on the other side of her face she has a butterfly on her face. It's a really beautiful cover, but because of the lockdown, I don't have access to American covers at the moment, so I might end up replacing this cover once the lockdown is over. But I'm so happy that I at least have a copy of this book that I can read in May. Now, I'm going into this book knowing that it's not necessarily going to be a fun journey. In fact, this book deals with a very tough, sensitive topic. However, what I have been told about this book is that it is an incredibly important read, and the topic is a very important topic that needed to be written about in the way that this was. From what I have been told, which is spoiler free, the basic premise of this book is that Vanessa is a student at school. She ends up dating her professor, and he does something psychologically to her that she's not aware of because of how young she is. She's just not seeing it, and she's blinded by love. It is multiple perspectives. So from what I've heard, there is the perspective of her at the age where she's dating the professor, and the perspective of her where she's older, looking back on the things that she missed. Again, I know this is not going to be a fun read, but considering how important this topic is psychological issues with relationships, especially with relationships that have such a major age gap, I definitely feel it is an important read to have, and I'm honoured to have it in my May TBR. So it's going to be a tough one, but it's going to be worth it. This book is I honestly don't know. I probably would call it a romance, but I honestly don't know. You know what? I'm going to find out. Okay, so the genre for this is psychological fiction. Yeah, so makes sense considering what I've said. Okay, the third book that I'm going to read for week 3 in May is this one. Yay. I'm sorry, I can't even get to the title without saying yay. Okay, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. In March, I read this book, The Heroes of Olympus, The Lost Hero, and I gave it 5 stars. It was so amazing, shrouded in what is very clearly seen to be such amazing research into Greek and Roman mythology that is pieced and parceled out all throughout the novel. This is a middle grade book, and I had so much fun with it. As you can see at the top of the cover, it says, Return to Percy Jackson's World. I had not read the Percy Jackson series. I had heard a lot about the Percy Jackson series, and I was debating whether or not, this is book 1 in this series, I was debating whether or not to get to start off with Percy Jackson 1 or to get the second book in this series. Clearly I chose this one, so I'm really happy to be reading this book considering how much I love the Heroes of Olympus, The Lost Hero. This is a middle grade book, but if it's as fun as the Lost Hero, I'm going to really enjoy it. It is, again, by Rick Riordan, and yeah, Rick Riordan is, in my estimation, he's not only an amazing author, but he is a brilliant researcher. As much as I know nothing about his research techniques, I can tell how thoroughly he researched Greek and Roman mythology in The Lost Hero, because it is pieced and parceled out so incredibly well that you can tell he spent a ton of time researching Greek and Roman mythology before creating the book that he created, to ensure that he can slot in things about Greek and Roman mythology along the way, making it an incredibly exciting read. So this is the first book in the original Percy Jackson series, The Lightning Thief, and Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, I should say. And I'm really looking forward to reading this. Can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun. Oh, page count of these two books just quickly. So My Dark Vanessa is 372 pages and Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief is 374 pages. So if those 3 books weren't enough, in week 3 I'm actually going to be reading 4 books. Now there's a reason for this. So today I am filming this on the, oh gosh, what's the date today? On the 29th of April. I finished the last book in my April TBR on the 27th of April. This will be day 2 where I don't read anything, and that is a massive struggle for me. And I read 12 books in April, so I want to read 13 books in May to ensure that I am reading something every single day of the month. So I'm going to be reading 4 books in week 3. I would have made it 4 books in week 4, but the page count for the 3 books I'm going to read in week 4 will not allow me to do that because they are very, very hefty fellas. So, the final book that I'm going to read in week 3, the 4th book I'm going to read in week 3 of May is Divergent by Veronica Roth. I have seen this film a couple of times and I love it. So the book itself is not technically a reread, however, I have seen what was adapted from this book. Now, I'm not necessarily a fan of this cover, and in fact, upon research, I realized that this is the only book that really has this cover. All the others have a really awesome cover, so feel free to check it out and you can see what that looks like. But if I love the book itself, which I think I will because I love the film, if I love the book itself, I'm going to replace the cover to get the original cover. This obviously is a cover that's from the movie itself, and you guys know that I prefer to have, books that don't have any showing of a picture to do with the film. So this is what I have on hand at the moment, so this is what I will read. But if I enjoy it, I will replace it with the other cover. This book, Divergent, has 487 pages, so that makes it 13 pages shy of a tome, and that is why I needed to fit it into a week where I could slot this book in, and I could not slot it into week 4. The total amount of pages that I'm going to read in week 3 of May is 1,550, which means I'm going to roughly be reading about 222 pages a day in week 3. So now let's get on to week 4, the final week in May. And of course, we're naturally going to be continuing on with the Harry Potter series. So the first book that I'm going to read in week 4 of May is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Now, this is an incredibly long book. It is 636 pages long, you guys, so it goes over the tome mark by 136 pages. I think it's one of the longest, if not the longest, book in the Harry Potter series. I don't know, don't quote me on that, but it is a very long book. I will say this, I am looking forward to reading this book, but I'll give you a warning right now for when I do my review. I do not like the film, The Goblet of Fire, at all, because the way that it was adapted from the film, there are things that were put into that film that really upset me. Not only did they deviate from the plot, but they do things in a very different way, particularly with a very famous scene that I will discuss with you guys when I do come to reviewing this book. But this is the first book I'm going to be reading in week 4 of May, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, which is 636 pages long. The second book that I'm going to be reading in the final week of May is Blood Promise by Rochelle Mead. This is the 4th book in the Vampire Academy series. I've got so many series that I'm reading at the moment. In the Vampire Academy series, I read book 3 last month and I absolutely loved it. You'll hear more about that tomorrow. And yeah, so obviously I'm continuing on with my Vampire Academy series read. I am going to get all the way through this series this time because the first time I read it, which was when they first came out, which was at least 10 years ago, I think I stopped after reading Blood Promise, but I don't know why. But this time I'm going to get through all of them. So I'm going to read Blood Promise. This book is 503 pages. So this is a tome by 3 pages. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire is a tome by 136 pages. So that's why I couldn't fit Divergent into week 4, because already these two books combined go over 1,100 pages. So there was just no way of fitting Divergent into week 4. Really excited to read this one. Blood Promise is a young adult urban fantasy. Well, all of the Vampire Academies are young adult urban fantasy novels about vampires. And in the first 3 books, they're at school. So that's why it's called Vampire Academy, because they're at a school learning stuff about being vampires. I don't want to give it away, but book 3 was such an amazing read. It is the best rated book in the series the best book that I've rated so far of the series I've read so far, of the books I've read so far. We're doing really well. So I've read the first 3. 3 is the best one. That's what I'm trying to say. So I'm really looking forward to reading book 4. We'll see how we go. The final book that I'm going to read in May is one that I have so many feelings about. It's mixed feelings galore. I am excited. I am nervous. I am incredibly trepidatious going into this book. However, if you've been following my channel for a long time, it shouldn't surprise you too much that this is going to be the last book that I'm going to read in May. The final book I'm going to read in May is the 4th book in the Mistborn series, The Alloy of Law. Now, first thing I've noticed about The Alloy of Law compared to Mistborn 1, The Final Empire, Mistborn 2, The Well of Ascension, and Mistborn 3, The Hero of Ages, is how incredibly short this book is. So those ones are at least tomes. The first 3 books in the original series, the versions that I had. This book is only 332 pages long. So it's a really small book for Sanderson, which really surprises me. I loved the original Mistborn trilogy. I wrapped up my thoughts on that, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, so you can check that out in my videos that I did this week. And yeah, absolutely loved it. Book 4 kind of deviates a little bit. It's the exact same world, but the characters that we all grew to know and absolutely love in the first 3 books are no longer around in book 4. It escalates some 300 odd years into the future from book 3 just to book 4. So I am looking forward to it because I love this world. But to have new characters, there's a little bit of trepidation within me reading this book. But I hope that I enjoy it because I would like to get through the entire Mistborn series at least as an ode to how much the original Mistborn trilogy did for me, did for my life, did for my reading. It just, yeah, it really did a wonder for me, the first 3 books, the original trilogy. So we'll see how we go with this one. So in week 4, I'm going to be reading a total of 1,471 pages, which will average out to 211 pages per day. I'm going to be very, very busy, especially in the 3rd and 4th week. The grand total amount of pages for my entire May TBR is 5,324, which does seem like a lot, but it's actually less than my April TBR. It just seems like more. There are more books, less pages. Anyway, it is what it is. So, just quickly going to now jump over to back to what I'm reading in week 1, so that we can discuss that in case you want to buddy read it with me, and something that I quickly want to tell you guys about week 2, so we'll go right over and quickly do that. Okay, so in my vlogs, I discuss individually the books I'm going to read each week in case you want to buddy read with me in the order that I'm going to read them in. With this TBR, I have shown you the books in the order I'm going to read them anyway, but just quickly to show you specifically week 1 once more. The first book in week 1 is Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. This book, considering how many pages I need to get through in week 1 to complete the 3 books I want to read, this book will be read over the course of 2 days, so it'll be read incredibly quickly. I'll be done with this by the end of the 2nd of May. Then I'll be reading The City We Became. I believe this is going to take me about 3 days or so to get through. About 2 or 3 days. Oh, sorry, it will take me more because week 1 is 10 days. That's something I want to tell you as well. Because week 1 starts on Friday. So for me, I'm going to have week 1 be Friday the 1st, Saturday the 2nd, Sunday the 3rd, and then through to the next Sunday will be week 1. So it's going to take me about 4 or so days to read this one, 4 or 5 days, and then 4 or 5 days to read The Hunger Games by Susan Collins. So if you want to buddy read with me, these are the books I'm going to be reading in week 1, and you can certainly join me with buddy reading with me in week 1. The next thing I wanted to quickly talk about was was week 2. As you guys noticed as I was going throughout my... Sorry about the flickering in the background there. As you guys noticed as I was going through my May TBR, every week the first book I was going to read in that week was Harry Potter. But in week 2, the first book I'm going to be reading is The Elite. The second book I'm going to read is The Chamber of Secrets. There's a reason for this. My birthday falls on the second day of week 2, the 12th of May. So I want to be reading this book. I love Harry Potter, and that's why I'm reading Harry Potter this month. I do love it. But I want to be reading this book on my birthday, and so that's why I've swapped that around. So on my birthday, I will be reading The Elite, but I'll talk more about that in my wrap up for week 1 of May. So much to discuss in this May TBR. It's not April, it's May. Once again, I want to give a massive shout out to my bookstore who have just been so amazing, without which I would not have most of these books. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, if I did not have what I have with my local bookstore, I wouldn't have 8 of my 13 books. The City we became, The Hunger Games, The Elite, The Shadow of What Was Lost, My Dark Vanessa, Percy Jackson, the 4th book in the Vampire Academy series, Blood Promise, and the 4th book in the Mistborn series, The Alloy of Law. I would not have these right now if not for the wonderful relationship I have with my local bookstore, because it would take an incredibly long time to get these books into the warehouse and then an incredibly long time for it to be sent to me, so I would not have had it there on time. So I just want to show my gratitude. At the moment, I'm not naming the name of my bookstore because I don't have their permission to say their name yet, but if I do get their permission, I will state their name in another video, but just thank you to them. I also want to give a very big thank you once again to my mum for purchasing The Elite for me so that I can read it on my birthday. I'm very, very excited to be reading that one. Alright, you guys, that's where we're going to leave it. It is an incredibly hefty TBR. So we have weeks 1 and 2. And, oh gosh, it's going to be a bit harder. Weeks 3 and 4. We have a ton of books to get through in May, and I could not be more excited. I can't wait. Midnight, 1st of May, I am cracking open this baby, and I'm going to start reading again. It's going to be awesome. If you have any comments, thoughts, and or questions, please do not hesitate to leave them in the comments section below. What are you going to be reading in May for 2020? Let me know that as well. In the meantime, mwah. Thank you so much for watching, and happy reading. Bye guys, bye.